Number 1. Melody Feliciano Johnson. Every morning, Roby Johnson followed the same routine. The night before, he'd fill his coffee maker with water and grounds so that when he woke up, all he had to do was press a button. It was a small, simple habit, the kind most people never think twice about. But in March of 2023, while Roby was stationed in Germany with the US Air Force, that routine became the center of something dangerous. Roby and his wife, Melody Feliciano Johnson, were still living together at the base where Roby was stationed in Germany. They shared it with their child. But by that point, the marriage had already started falling apart, though the exact reasons were never made public. The two were already going through a divorce, sleeping in separate bedrooms, using separate bathrooms. On the surface, it was a household holding itself together for logistics. Underneath, something far worse was happening. It started with the taste. Roby noticed his morning coffee had a foul, chemical edge to it. Not stale or burnt, something different. He kept drinking it for about 2 to 3 weeks, assuming maybe the machine needed cleaning or the water was off. But the taste didn't go away. It got worse. So Roby did something most people wouldn't think to do. He went out and bought pool chemical testing strips. He dipped one into the water sitting in his coffee pot, and it came back showing high levels of chlorine. Then he tested the tap water from the faucet. That came back completely normal. That's when Roby stopped drinking the coffee. But he didn't say a word to Melody. Instead, he kept pretending. Every morning, he'd go through the motions, act like everything was fine, let her believe he was still drinking from the pot, and quietly, he set up a hidden camera inside the house. The footage from that first camera appeared to show Melody pouring something into his coffee maker, but the quality wasn't clear enough to be definitive. Still, Roby now had a strong suspicion of what was going on, and he made a calculated decision. He chose not to report it in Germany. He wanted to wait until they were back on American soil. On June 28, 2023, the Johnson family returned to the United States and were placed in temporary housing at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. Almost immediately, Roby set up another camera. Once again, the footage appeared to show Melody tampering with the coffee pot, pouring something into the water reservoir. On July 6th, he walked into the Tucson Police Department and filed a formal report, telling officers his wife was trying to poison him by putting bleach in his coffee maker. He showed them the video. But the officers at the front desk reviewed the footage and felt it wasn't clear enough. They took the report, but there was no follow-up investigation. So Roby went further. He purchased a better camera, one designed to look like a smoke detector, and mounted it on the ceiling. When the family moved into permanent housing on July 7th, he installed not one, but 3 cameras. One was placed in the laundry room, where the bleach was kept. A second was mounted directly above the coffee maker, and a third captured the hallway between the two, the path someone would walk carrying something from the laundry to the kitchen. On July 18th, those cameras captured what Roby had been building toward. The footage showed Melody taking a bleach bottle, pouring its contents into a smaller container, then walking from the laundry room to the coffee maker and pouring the liquid inside. The coffee maker was exclusively his. Nobody else in the house used it. He gathered the videos and brought them back to the Tucson Police Department. This time, the footage was clear. Officers executed a search warrant on the home. When they examined the coffee maker, the liquid inside smelled exactly like bleach. Under the sink in Melody's personal bathroom, they found a small container with a trace amount of liquid that also smelled like bleach. The physical evidence lined up with what the cameras had recorded. Melody was arrested at the home. She immediately invoked her right to an attorney and was not questioned by investigators. Her bond was set at $250,000, and prosecutors asked the court to treat her as a flight risk, noting that she had family in the Philippines and had recently purchased a home there. Melody could not post the bond and remained in the Pima County Jail. When Roby spoke to detectives, he was direct about what he believed. He told them he thought Melody was trying to kill him to collect his military death benefits, the financial payout that would go to a surviving spouse if a service member dies. A grand jury indicted Melody on 4 charges, including attempted first-degree murder with a domestic violence designation, aggravated assault, causing serious physical injury, and 2 counts of adding poison or a harmful substance to food or drink. She initially entered a not guilty plea. For nearly a year, the case moved through the court system while Melody sat in jail, unable to make bail. Then, on April 8, 2024, she appeared in court and accepted a plea deal. The attempted murder and aggravated assault charges were dropped. In exchange, Melody pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts of adding poison or a harmful substance to food or drink, specifically for the incidents on July 11th and July 18th, 2023. At her sentencing on May 10th, 2024, Melody's attorney told the court her client suffered from anxiety and depression and described what she called a toxic marriage, alleging that Roby had been abusive and had issues with alcohol. These claims were not proven or adjudicated. They were statements made by the defense. On the other side, something unexpected happened. Roby Johnson, the man who had spent months quietly building a case against his own wife, told the court he did not want Melody to go to prison. He asked for probation and mental health treatment. Pima County Superior Court Judge Javier Chan Lopez took that into account. He sentenced Melody to 3 years of probation with no additional jail time, noting she had already spent roughly a year behind bars. The judge also ordered a mental health evaluation and ongoing treatment, along with a no-contact order preventing Melody from reaching out to Roby unless it was within the legal context of their still-pending divorce. Number 2. Xiuming Li. In the summer of 2023, Umar Abdullah and his wife Samira started noticing something wrong in their Tampa apartment. There was a smell, something chemical, and it wouldn't go away. Then they started getting sick. Both of them developed severe headaches, nausea, shortness of breath. Their 10-month-old daughter stopped eating and began vomiting. Then the hair loss started. The baby's hair came out in clumps. Umar's hair, his wife's hair, all falling out and collecting on their pillows. The Abdullahs had moved into their unit at Oxford Place at Tampa Palms about a year earlier, in June of 2022. 2 months later, their daughter was born. That's when the problems with their downstairs neighbor started. His name was Xiuming Li, 36 years old, a chemistry PhD student at the University of South Florida. Li began texting complaints about noise, footsteps, a squeaky toilet seat, doors closing. Umar tried to work with him. He and the landlord even ran a noise simulation and found almost nothing. But the complaints continued for months. In late May 2023, a friend came by to grab a package for the family and noticed the smell right away. When the Abdullahs got back, they smelled it too, like nail polish remover, but worse. Way more intense, Umar said later. Tampa Fire Department showed up several times but couldn't figure out what it was. The family replaced their water heater, got the air ducts cleaned. Nothing worked, and all 3 of them just kept getting sicker. By mid-June, Umar suspected his downstairs neighbor might be involved. On June 27th, he installed a small camera inside a plant pot outside his front door. That evening, around 5:30, the camera captured something. Xiuming Li crouching by the door with a syringe in his hand. The video showed him injecting a liquid under the door frame, holding his breath while he did it. Umar called the cops right away. Tampa police arrested Li that same night. A hazmat team tested the substance and identified it as a mixture of methadone and hydrocodone, both powerful opioid pain medications. The chemicals had been seeping into the apartment, aerosolizing near the entryway where the family passed through every day. A police officer who was exposed during the investigation developed a skin rash and needed medical treatment. The Abdullah's daughter had to be taken to the emergency room with an IV catheter in her tiny hand. Li was charged with 1 count of felony aggravated stalking, 3 counts of dispersing a chemical agent, possession of a controlled substance, and battery on a law enforcement officer. He was released 2 days later on a bond, totaling $5,750. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. What made the case particularly disturbing was Li's background. He wasn't just a chemistry student. He had access to a university laboratory, and he'd used it. In a letter to the university, Li admitted he had used the campus chemistry lab to mix and load the liquid into syringes on multiple occasions. The University of South Florida expelled him shortly after his arrest. Li had been in the United States on a student visa. Once he was expelled, that visa was revoked. In early December 2023, just before a scheduled court hearing, immigration officials deported him to China. The judge issued a capias warrant, which means if Li ever tries to return to the United States, he'll be arrested immediately and face the pending charges. Xiuming Li never stood trial in the United States. He's back in China now, and the criminal case against him remains open and waiting in a Florida courthouse. Number 3. Yue Emily Yu. In the spring of 2022, Dr. Jack Chen, a 53-year-old radiologist living in Irvine, California, began noticing something wrong with his daily cup of tea. The taste had changed. There was a chemical quality to it that hadn't been there before. Within weeks, he was sick. His doctor diagnosed him with 2 stomach ulcers, gastritis, and inflammation of the esophagus. The symptoms were severe enough that Chen started to suspect he wasn't just dealing with a medical condition. He suspected his wife. His wife was Dr. Yue Yu, known as Emily, a 45-year-old dermatologist practicing in nearby Mission Viejo. They'd been married for 10 years and had 2 young children together. But by April of 2022, the marriage was falling apart, and Chen was becoming convinced that Emily was putting something in his drinks. So he installed hidden cameras in their kitchen, multiple angles, including one positioned under the sink. He wanted to know what was happening when he wasn't looking. The cameras ran for weeks. Then, on July 11th, they captured something. The footage showed Emily walking to the kitchen counter where Chen's tea sat cooling. She went to the cabinet under the sink, pulled out a red bottle of Drano liquid drain cleaner, removed the covering from his cup, poured the chemical into his drink, and replaced the covering. She put the bottle back under the sink and walked away. It happened again on July 18th. Chen had covered his hot lemonade with plastic wrap before stepping out of the kitchen. The hidden camera recorded Emily peeling back the wrap, pouring drain cleaner from the same bottle, then carefully replacing the cellophane as if nothing had happened. A third incident was captured on July 25th. Chen didn't just rely on the video. He collected samples of his drinks before consuming them and stored them as evidence. On August 4th, 2022, he contacted the Irvine Police Department. He turned over the video footage and the drink samples. The samples were sent to an FBI laboratory for analysis. The results confirmed what Chen suspected. The liquid was consistent with drain cleaner, a highly caustic substance containing sodium hydroxide that can cause severe chemical burns to human tissue. That same day, Irvine police detectives obtained a search warrant and went to the family home. They interviewed Emily Yu and placed her under arrest for poisoning. She was booked into Orange County Jail and released the following day after posting $30,000 bail. Chen filed for divorce and a restraining order on the same day he reported the poisoning to police. In his filing, he detailed what he described as years of physical, verbal, and emotional abuse, not just toward him but also toward their 2 children. The case moved slowly through the system. It wasn't until April of 2023 that an Orange County grand jury handed down an indictment. Emily Yu was charged with 3 felony counts of poisoning and 1 felony count of domestic battery with corporal injury. If convicted on all counts, she faced a maximum sentence of 8 years and 8 months in state prison. The indictment also required her to report to the Medical Board of California, which would determine whether she could continue practicing medicine. Yu pleaded not guilty in May of 2023. Her defense attorneys presented a completely different version of events. They claimed the family had a serious ant problem in the kitchen and that Jack Chen had actually instructed his wife to mix Drano with lemonade or tea as bait to kill the ants. According to the defense, Chen then set up the hidden cameras specifically to catch her doing what he'd told her to do, so he could use the footage against her in the divorce and custody battle. Defense attorney Scott Simmons argued that Chen never even went to an emergency room for treatment and that the medical evidence was inconsistent with someone who had actually consumed drain cleaner. He suggested Chen's stomach problems were more likely caused by acid reflux, or GERD, not poisoning. The defense also pointed out that Chen didn't call 911 when he suspected he was being poisoned. Instead, he called a divorce lawyer. The case was set for trial in early 2024, but it was repeatedly delayed. Then, in October of 2025, on what was supposed to be the first day of trial, prosecutors filed a motion to dismiss the charges. A key witness was unavailable. But the dismissal wasn't the end. Prosecutors announced they intended to refile the case. 2 months later, in January of 2026, a new grand jury handed down a superseding indictment. This time, the charges included 3 additional counts of attempted poisoning, along with the original charges. As of early 2026, the case remains unresolved. Emily Yu continues to maintain her innocence. Jack Chen has since finalized the divorce and recovered from his medical injuries. The video footage, the FBI test results, and the competing narratives about ant problems and marriage manipulation All wait for a jury to decide what actually happened in that Irvine kitchen during the summer of 2022. Number 4. Rosemary Vogel. On the afternoon of January 30th, 2014, 66-year-old Philip Vogel lay in a recovery room at Chandler Regional Medical Center in Arizona, resting after a heart stent procedure. His wife of 35 years, Rosemary Vogel, sat by his bedside. She was a retired registered nurse who had once worked at this very hospital. She knew the routines, the equipment, and the blind spots in the system. Around 1:30 that afternoon, an IV pump alarm suddenly went off in Philip's room. 2 nurses rushed in to investigate. What they found stopped them cold. Rosemary was standing over her husband, her hands on his IV line, manipulating the tubing. When they asked what she was doing, she calmly told them the line needed to be flushed. But something didn't sit right. One of the nurses examined the IV line more closely and discovered a brown substance inside. There was an unmistakable fecal odor coming from the tubing. The line was immediately disconnected from Philip's arm and capped. As the nurse stepped away to get help, she noticed Rosemary trying to dump the contents of the IV bag into a trash can. The nurse intervened, grabbing the bag away from her. The substance inside was sent to the hospital lab for immediate testing. The results came back positive for fecal matter. Hospital security called the Chandler Police Department. When officers arrived and searched Rosemary's purse, they found 3 syringes. 2 contained a clear liquid that was never publicly identified. The 3rd syringe had traces of a brown substance on its protective cap. Lab analysis confirmed it was fecal matter. Rosemary Vogel, 65 years old at the time of her arrest, was taken into custody. She declined to speak with investigators and requested an attorney. Police initially charged her with aggravated assault, but after reviewing the evidence, upgraded the charges to attempted first-degree murder and vulnerable adult abuse. Her bond was set at $100,000, and she was ordered to stay away from her husband. But as the case moved through the legal system, a different picture began to emerge. Rosemary's defense attorney revealed in court filings that while the marriage seemed happy from the outside, there were unspecified problems beneath the surface. He argued that his client had experienced some kind of breaking point, though he never elaborated on what those problems were. By the time the case reached the sentencing phase in December of 2014, the narrative had shifted. Prosecutor Blaine Gatto stood before Maricopa County Superior Court judge and made a surprising admission. He no longer believed Rosemary had been trying to kill her husband. Instead, Gatto theorized that she was attempting to take control of the relationship by debilitating Philip, making him dependent on her care. It was about power, not murder. Rosemary had already pleaded guilty to vulnerable adult abuse as part of a deal that dropped the attempted murder charge. She faced up to 10 years in prison. At her sentencing hearing, she told the judge she had been sleep-deprived and depressed when she contaminated the IV line. She claimed she had no memory of doing it. "I've always loved my husband through sickness and in health," she said. Philip Vogel, who had survived both the poisoning and his heart procedure, stood by his wife. He told the court he had forgiven her and that she posed no danger to him. Judge Gottsfield sentenced Rosemary Vogel to 1 year in Maricopa County Jail, with the option to serve it on weekends, and 4 years of supervised probation. She was also required to undergo mental health screening. As part of the resolution, she surrendered her nursing license to Arizona medical regulators. Number 5. Brian Kozlowski. Every morning in July of 2018, Therese Kozlowski drank coffee her husband Brian made for her in their Macomb Township, Michigan home, and every morning, she felt sick. The nausea would hit during her commute to work in Detroit. Her vision would blur behind the wheel. One morning on Interstate 375, she nearly crashed after falling asleep at the wheel during rush hour. Therese was an accountant making $180,000 a year. 2 months earlier, in May, she'd filed for divorce from Brian, her husband of 22 years. They were still living in the same house, and Brian had been making her morning coffee before she left for work. It took her weeks to connect the dots. The symptoms only appeared on the days he prepared her coffee. She installed hidden cameras in the kitchen and waited. What she captured on video was chilling. The footage showed Brian Kozlowski standing at the kitchen counter with a shot glass. He dissolved 8 sleeping pills in the glass, then poured the liquid into the coffee pot. He swirled the pot around to distribute the drug throughout the coffee. Then he poured himself a clean cup and left the poisoned pot for his wife. Therese saved the last coffee pot he'd made and had it analyzed. The lab results came back, showing 127 milliliters of diphenhydramine, the active ingredient in Benadryl. The normal adult dose is 10 to 20 milliliters. Brian had put 6 to 12 times the recommended maximum dose into his wife's morning coffee. It was the equivalent of 8 sleeping pills in a single pot. But Therese wasn't the only victim. The couple's adult daughter had also drunk from the poisoned pot one morning before driving to work. She made it to her office and immediately fell asleep at her desk for 2 hours. Brian had unknowingly put his own daughter's life at risk. Therese moved out immediately and contacted her attorney. During the divorce proceedings, she revealed that the coffee wasn't Brian's first attempt to harm her. She claimed he'd put Adderall in her vodka during boat trips, mixed laxatives into her protein powder, and even urinated in her shampoo and conditioner bottles. The poisoning was an escalation. The motive became clear during court proceedings. With Therese dead, Brian stood to collect over $1 million from her life insurance, retirement accounts, and savings. As she told the judge, Brian was trying to eliminate her to keep his comfortable life from slipping away. Brian Kozlowski was arrested and charged with poisoning. On June 13, 2019, he pleaded no contest to the felony charge. The crime carried a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. But on August 1, 2019, visiting Judge Antonio Viviano handed down a sentence that stunned the courtroom: 60 days in jail, to be served on weekends, and 5 years of probation. The judge said Brian showed remorse and had sought psychiatric care. He justified the lenient sentence by saying he didn't want to turn Brian into a hardened criminal. Therese stood before the court and called it attempted murder. She described watching the surveillance footage and falling to her knees in horror. She explained how Brian had destroyed their family and traumatized their 3 adult children, 2 of whom were now estranged from their father. She'd been hunted by a predator in her own home, and that predator was the man she'd spent 29 years with. Prosecutor Eric Smith called the sentence a slap in the face to the victim and the justice system. He said the court seemed more focused on protecting the defendant's freedom and ability to work than on the victim's safety. Brian Kozlowski apologized in court, saying he was deeply sorry for what he'd done. His defense attorney argued he was going through an ugly divorce and had experienced depression after learning his wife wanted to leave him. The divorce was finalized in February of 2019. Brian served his 60 weekend days and walked free. Therese survived, but the family he destroyed did not. And that's all we have for you today. If you want to see more in-depth true crime investigations like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Until next time.